The distress signal came through at 0347 hours Galactic Standard Time, and Admiral Kyle Morrison was already awake when it hit his terminal. He had been reviewing supply reports in his quarters aboard the UNS Valkyrie, unable to sleep as usual. The message was automated and desperate, repeating the same plea over and over in 17 different languages. The Valine colony on Zeraxis Prime was under attack. The Krell had come. Morrison felt his blood run cold. The Krell were supposed to be extinct, or at least dormant. 300 years had passed since their last appearance in this sector. Back then they had wiped out 4 entire species before the combined galactic forces drove them back. Drove them back, not destroyed them. That had been the mistake. He pulled up the star charts and calculated the distance. The Fifth Fleet was conducting training exercises in the Outer Rim, 2 days away at maximum faster-than-light speed. The nearest Council fleet was 3 weeks out. Morrison knew what that meant. The Valine had maybe 72 hours before their entire population was consumed. Commander Lisa Grant entered his quarters without knocking. She had received the same alert. Her dark hair was pulled back tight and her eyes were sharp with focus. She was 32 and had earned her position through sheer tactical brilliance, not politics or connections. Morrison trusted her more than anyone else in the fleet. "Sir, the Council is calling an emergency session," she said. "They want all available commanders to report immediately via hologram." Morrison nodded and activated his communication array. Within minutes, he was standing in a projected conference room with dozens of other military leaders from across the galaxy. The council chambers were in chaos. Alien voices overlapped in panic, each species representative trying to speak over the others. Councillor Vrel of the Torvin Collective was particularly agitated. His insectoid body clicked and chittered as he spoke. "The Krell cannot be stopped with conventional forces. We must evacuate the Valine and abandon the colony. It is the only logical solution." Morrison listened to them argue for 15 minutes before he had heard enough. He activated his microphone and his voice cut through the noise like a blade. "The Fifth Fleet can be there in 2 days. We have 43 warships and full marine deployment capability. We can engage the Krell and extract the survivors." The chamber fell silent. Every alien eye turned toward his holographic projection. Morrison could feel their fear, their uncertainty. Humans were new to the galactic community. Only 70 years since first contact. Most species still did not know what to make of them. Councillor Vrel spoke first, his translator rendering his clicks into smooth galactic common. "Admiral Morrison, with all due respect, your species lacks experience with threats of this magnitude. The Krell are not pirates or raiders. They are a force of nature. Perhaps it would be wiser to wait for more experienced fleets to arrive." Morrison met his gaze steadily. "Counselor, my species spent 10,000 years fighting forces of nature. Predators, diseases, other humans. We got very good at it. The Valine need help now, not in 3 weeks. We can provide that help." The debate continued, but Morrison knew how it would end. They were desperate and he was offering them hope, even if that hope came wrapped in human violence. The vote was close but ultimately passed. The Fifth Fleet was authorized to respond to the distress call with full tactical autonomy. Grant closed the communication link and looked at Morrison. "Sir, they have no idea what they just unleashed." Morrison pulled up the deployment orders on his screen. "They know exactly what they unleashed. They just hope the Krell are worse." The Fifth Fleet jumped to faster than light within the hour. 43 warships, each one built to human specifications that other species considered excessive. Triple reinforced hulls, redundant power systems, weapons that violated the spirit if not the letter of Council regulations. Humans built their ships expecting them to take damage, expecting them to keep fighting even when they should be dead. Morrison gathered his senior staff in the briefing room. Grant stood at his right. Dr. Helen Carter, the fleet xenobiologist, pulled up holographic images of the Krell. Lieutenant Jake Holland, Marine Commander, studied the images with a professional eye. "The Krell operate as a hive mind," Carter explained. "Each warrior is controlled by a central queen mind located somewhere in their fleet. They communicate through pheromones and quantum-entangled neurons. Kill the queen and the swarm becomes disorganized." Holland leaned forward. "How tough are they physically?" Carter adjusted the hologram to show a detailed anatomy scan. 4 meters tall, exoskeleton harder than titanium, acidic blood that melts through most materials. They have no concept of self-preservation. They will continue attacking until they are physically incapable of movement. So we shoot them until they stop moving, Holland said simply. Marines can handle that. Morrison appreciated the confidence, but he knew the reality would be uglier. The Krell do not take prisoners. They do not negotiate. Every civilian on that planet is either already dead or will be soon. Our job is to save whoever is left and make sure the Krell never threaten anyone again. The trip took 2 days. Morrison spent most of it reviewing historical records of Krell encounters. The pattern was always the same. They arrived in bioships, massive organic vessels grown from consumed matter. They landed ground forces that swept through population centers like locusts. They took everything: resources, biological matter, technology. Then they moved on, leaving nothing but empty husks of worlds behind. When the fleet dropped out of faster than light at the edge of the Xeraxis system, the sight made even Morrison pause. 17 bioships orbited the planet, each one the size of a city. The surface was burning. Entire continents showed the orange glow of fires. Scanner readings showed minimal life signs where there should have been millions. A faint transmission came through, barely audible through the static. A Valine voice, female, breaking with terror. "Please help us. They are in the shelters. They are eating the children, please." The transmission cut off abruptly. Grant stood beside Morrison on the bridge, her hands clenched into fists. "Sir, your orders?" Morrison studied the tactical display. 17 bioships. Estimated 200,000 Krell warriors on the ground. 50,000 Valine survivors scattered in underground shelters. The math was simple and brutal. All ships to battle formation Delta. Target the bioships. Weapons free on my mark. He turned to the communications officer. "Send a priority message to Council Command. Inform them we are engaging the enemy. Tell them we are implementing Protocol Scorched Earth." The officer hesitated. "Sir, that protocol is not officially authorized for use outside human space." Morrison's voice was cold and final. "It is now. Send the message." The fleet moved into attack formation, and Morrison gave the order he had been trained his entire career to give. Fire. The first salvo lit up the darkness of space like a miniature sun. Dozens of fusion warheads detonated simultaneously against the bioship hulls, creating overlapping spheres of superheated plasma. The organic armor, grown over decades and reinforced with consumed metals, began to burn away under the incredible heat. The human fleet opened fire with a coordinated barrage that would have horrified any Council observer. Fusion warheads streaked through space, each one carrying enough destructive power to level a city. They impacted against the bioship hulls and detonated in brilliant flashes of light and heat. The organic armor burned away in sections, exposing the vulnerable interior structures. Railguns followed immediately after, accelerating tungsten rods to near light speed. The projectiles punched through the weakened bioships like paper, tearing massive holes that vented atmosphere and biological matter into space. The Krell vessels tried to respond, but their weapons were designed for planetary bombardment, not ship-to-ship combat against an enemy that moved with human speed and precision. Morrison watched the tactical display with cold efficiency. 3 bioships were already showing critical damage. 2 more were breaking apart under the sustained assault. The Krell were not stupid, though. They adapted quickly. Thousands of smaller craft began launching from the larger vessels, each one a biofighter carrying dozens of warriors. "Point defense systems active," Grant called out. "All ships report tracking locks acquired." The human point defense network was a marvel of overkill engineering. Originally designed to intercept nuclear missiles during Earth's final World War, the systems had been upgraded with galactic technology. They could track and destroy hundreds of targets simultaneously. The Krell fighters flew into a wall of directed energy and kinetic rounds. Most were shredded before they got within a kilometer of the fleet. Some got through. It was inevitable with numbers that large. 2 fighters managed to ram the destroyer UNS Hammer, punching through the outer hull with their armored prows. Krell warriors poured into the breach, their acid blood eating through bulkheads and support structures. The ship's internal alarms blared. Marines stationed aboard the Hammer responded immediately, moving through the corridors in full-powered armor. Each suit was a miniature tank, giving the wearer strength to match the Krell and armor thick enough to withstand their attacks. Lieutenant Holland led the response team personally. He had been aboard the Valkyrie but transported over the moment the breach was reported. He found the Krell in Corridor 7, Deck 3. There were 15 of them, each one massive and covered in chitinous plates. Their limbs ended in blades that could slice through steel. Holland did not hesitate. He opened fire with his mounted autocannon, and the corridor filled with thunder. The rounds were depleted uranium, designed to penetrate heavy armor. They tore into the Krell warriors, shattering exoskeletons and punching through internal organs. The Krell screamed, a sound like metal scraping on metal, and charged forward. The Marines met them in close combat. Powered fists struck with enough force to crack concrete. Blade attachments on armor gauntlets cut through Krell limbs. The fighting was brutal and savage, exactly the kind of warfare humans had perfected over millennia of evolution on a deadly world. 3 Marines went down, their armor compromised by acid blood or crushing blows. But for every human that fell, 5 Krell died. Holland personally killed the last warrior, driving his armored fist through its thorax and crushing the neural cluster inside. The corridor was a mess of bodies and acid-scarred metal. Holland checked his people. 2 were dead, 1 was critical. He felt the familiar weight of command, the cost of victory measured in lives. "Seal this section and vent it to space," he ordered. "Get the wounded to medical, and someone tell the Admiral we are clear." Morrison received the report and filed it away. They had lost their first people of the engagement. There would be more before this was done. He turned his attention back to the main battle. 9 bioships were destroyed or disabled. The remaining 8 were trying to retreat, accelerating away from the planet toward the edge of the system. Grant looked at him questioningly. Council protocols required them to allow defeated enemies to disengage if they stopped fighting. But Morrison remembered the transmission from the Valine survivor. He remembered the terror in her voice. "Pursuit course, all ships, no survivors." Grant input the commands without comment. She understood. The Krell were not an enemy that could be allowed to regroup and return. They had to be eliminated completely or they would come back stronger, more numerous, more deadly. The human ships were faster. They caught the fleeing bioships one by one and destroyed them with focused fire. The last bioship tried to jump to faster-than-light travel. Grant had predicted the move and positioned 3 frigates along the projected jump vector. They fired a spread of missiles timed to intercept the bioship as it entered the transition phase. The missiles hit perfectly. The bioship tore itself apart, trying to exist in 2 dimensions simultaneously. The debris scattered across light years of space, frozen and dead. "Orbital space is clear," Grant reported. "All bioships destroyed. No enemy vessels remain in the system." Morrison allowed himself 1 moment of satisfaction before moving to the next phase. "Begin scanning for survivors on the surface. I want locations of all Valine shelters and estimates on Krell ground forces." Dr. Carter worked with the sensor teams, analyzing the data as it came in. What she found was grim. The Valine population had been approximately 3 million. Current life sign readings showed fewer than 50,000 survivors. Most were clustered in underground shelters designed to protect against natural disasters, not genocidal aliens. The Krell ground forces were concentrated around these shelters, trying to break through the reinforced doors. Scanner estimates put their numbers at over 200,000 warriors. They had been left behind when the bioships were destroyed, cut off from retreat but still fully committed to their mission. "Sir, the Krell are not stopping," Carter said. "Even without their ships, they are continuing the assault. Some of the shelter doors are failing. We have maybe 6 hours before they break through." Morrison pulled up the planetary map and studied the dispositions. A conventional ground assault would take days and cost thousands of human lives. The Krell would never surrender, and they were in the middle of population centers, making orbital bombardment impossible without killing the people they were trying to save. He made the decision that would define the rest of his career. Implement Protocol Scorched Earth. Create fire perimeters around every Valine shelter. Nothing gets through. Then eliminate everything outside those perimeters. His bridge crew exchanged looks but carried out the orders. They trusted Morrison, even when they did not fully understand his tactics. The fleet repositioned into geosynchronous orbits above each shelter location. Precision targeting systems locked onto the areas immediately surrounding the Valine defensive positions. Then the bombardment began. Thermobaric weapons hit first, consuming oxygen and creating pressure waves that crushed Krell warriors in the open. Directed energy beams followed, superheating the ground until it turned to glass. Kinetic penetrators struck strategic targets, destroying Krell nests and command clusters. The largest nest was located in what used to be the Valine capital city. Scanner readings showed the Queen Mind was there, buried deep underground and protected by tens of thousands of warriors. Morrison designated it as Priority Target Alpha. Fire kinetic penetrators on my mark. Full spread. I want that entire grid reduced to bedrock. The Valkyrie and 5 other capital ships launched their penetrators simultaneously. The tungsten rods fell from orbit, accelerating under gravity and thruster power until they hit at over 10 kilometers per second. The impacts registered as earthquakes. The entire city block where the nest had been simply ceased to exist, replaced by a crater half a kilometer deep. The Queen Mind died instantly. Across the planet, Krell warriors suddenly lost coordination. They stopped following tactical patterns and began acting on pure instinct. They were still deadly, but they were no longer organized. The Marine dropships launched from the fleet in waves, carrying thousands of soldiers in powered armor down to the planet's surface. They landed in the secure perimeters that the orbital bombardment had created, areas burned clean of Krell presence. From there, they began the systematic process of clearing the remaining enemy forces. Lieutenant Holland led his platoon toward Shelter Designation 7, where scanner readings showed approximately 2,000 Valine survivors. The shelter entrance was surrounded by Krell corpses, victims of the orbital strikes. Some were still twitching, their nervous systems not yet aware they were dead. The Marines moved through the carnage in practiced formation, weapons sweeping for targets. They found live Krell warriors quickly enough. A group of 50 had survived the bombardment by sheltering in a collapsed building. Without the Queen Mind's coordination, they simply charged at the Marines in a mindless rush. Holland's team cut them down with disciplined fire. The autocannons roared and the Krell fell. Some got close enough for melee combat, and the Marines met them with powered blades and crushing strength. It was ugly work, but it was necessary work. They reached the shelter entrance 20 minutes later. The door was heavily damaged, scarred by acid and claw marks. The Krell had been trying to break through when the orbital strike killed most of them. Holland accessed the communication panel and switched to the Valine frequency. This is Lieutenant Jake Holland of the Human 5th Fleet. The Krell have been neutralized in your sector. We are here to evacuate you. Please open the door. There was a long silence. Then a trembling voice responded in broken Galactic Common. How do we know you are not Krell? They have tried to trick us before. Holland understood the suspicion. The Valine had been through hell. The Krell do not speak. They do not use communication systems. I am transmitting our identification codes now. We are here to help. Another pause, then the massive door began to grind open. Emergency power was running it, barely enough to move the heavy blast panels. The opening revealed darkness beyond and the smell of fear. Holland removed his helmet despite protocol, showing his human face. My name is Jake. We are going to get you out of here. The Valine emerged slowly, blinking in the harsh daylight. They were a delicate species, thin and tall with translucent skin that showed their circulatory systems beneath. Many were injured. All were terrified. Children clung to adults who looked barely capable of standing themselves. One of the children, a small female no more than 5 years old in human terms, approached Holland. She reached up and touched his armored hand with her 3-fingered grip. Are you angels? She asked in a tiny voice. Holland did not know how to answer that. He had just spent the last hour killing living beings as efficiently as possible. Angels seemed like the wrong word, but he lifted the child gently and carried her toward the transport ship. We are here to take you somewhere safe, he said. That is all that matters. The evacuation process took 36 hours. Every Valine survivor was located and transported to the fleet medical ships. Human doctors worked alongside the few surviving Valine healers to treat injuries and trauma. The medical bays were designed for human casualties, but they adapted quickly to alien biology. Dr. Carter spent most of those hours working with the Valine, studying their physical and psychological state. What she learned made her sick to her stomach. The Krell had not just attacked the colony. They had systematically targeted the most vulnerable populations first. Schools, hospitals, retirement facilities. They had wanted to cause maximum trauma before consuming the rest. She reported her findings to Morrison. He listened in silence, his face carved from stone. When she finished, he simply nodded. Make sure the council sees that report. They need to understand exactly what the Krell are. On the surface, the Marine teams continued their sweep. The remaining Krell warriors were hunted down and eliminated one by one. Some tried to flee into the wilderness. Human scout teams tracked them using thermal sensors and eliminated them from long range. Others tried to dig into the ground and hide. Ground-penetrating radar found them and orbital strikes finished them. It took 3 days to confirm that every single Krell warrior on the planet was dead. The final count was 217,000 enemy killed. Human casualties were 43 Marines dead and 3,000 injured. One ship lost. The Hammer had been too badly damaged by the boarding action and was scuttled in orbit. Morrison stood in the observation deck of the Valkyrie and looked down at the planet below. Zerex's prime was scarred, burned, broken. The Valine capital city was a crater. Forests were reduced to ash. The ecosystem would take decades to recover. But the Krell were gone, every last one of them. Commander Grant joined him at the window. She carried 2 cups of coffee, real coffee from Earth. She handed him one and they stood in silence for a moment. The council is calling for you, she said finally. They want a full report. Councillor Vrel is demanding an inquiry into our methods. Morrison took a sip of the coffee. It was bitter and strong, exactly what he needed. They will get their inquiry. Let them ask their questions. We saved 50,000 lives. That is what matters. Some of the other species are frightened of us now, Grant continued. They watched the battle recordings. They saw how we fought. The ferocity of it. Good, Morrison said simply. Let them be frightened. Maybe next time they will think twice before letting a threat like the Krell grow unchecked. 3 weeks later, Morrison stood in the council chambers facing formal charges. Excessive use of force, violations of engagement protocols, and deliberate destruction of planetary infrastructure. Councillor Vrel presented the charges with barely concealed satisfaction. Admiral Morrison, your actions on Zeraxis Prime went far beyond the scope of your authorization. You destroyed 17 bioships without attempting communication. You pursued and killed fleeing enemies. You used weapons of mass destruction on a populated planet. How do you justify this? Morrison met his gaze steadily. The chamber was packed with representatives from hundreds of species, all watching to see how the human would respond. Counselor, I justify it by the 50,000 Valine who are alive today. I justify it by the fact that the Krell threat to this sector has been permanently eliminated. I justify it by doing what needed to be done when no one else could or would. Vrel's mandibles clicked in agitation. You killed 200,000 sentient beings without mercy. You reduced a city to rubble. This is not defense, Admiral. This is annihilation. Yes, Morrison agreed calmly. It is because the Krell are not a conventional enemy. They cannot be negotiated with. They cannot be contained. They exist only to consume. The only way to stop them is complete elimination. Anything less and they return stronger. The galaxy learned that lesson 300 years ago. Apparently some of you forgot. The chamber erupted in argument. Some species supported Morrison, particularly those who had suffered Krell attacks in the past. Others condemned him, calling for sanctions against humanity and restrictions on their military. Then Elder Severus of the Valine asked to speak. She was frail and old, her translucent skin showing the stress of recent trauma, but her voice was clear and strong. Members of the council, I am here because humans came when no one else could. I watched my world burn. I heard the screams of my people as they died. We called for help and you debated. You discussed protocols and procedures while we were being eaten alive. She turned to look directly at Morrison. Then the humans arrived. They did not debate. They did not hesitate. They fought like creatures from our darkest myths. And they won. You ask if they were too brutal, too violent. I ask you this. How many of my people would be alive today if they had fought a clean war? The answer is 0. The Krell do not take prisoners. They do not show mercy. The humans understood this and they matched the enemy in ferocity. Severus continued speaking and the council chamber fell silent. Every representative listened as she described the horror of the Krell attack, the days trapped underground listening to the sounds of her world dying above. She described the moment when the bombardment began and how terrified they had been, not knowing if the explosions meant salvation or doom. When Lieutenant Holland opened our shelter door, I saw a warrior covered in blood and battle damage. I saw someone who had fought through hell to reach us. He could have left us. He could have decided we were not worth the risk. But he did not. None of them did. They came for us when no one else would. She turned back to face the council. You want to punish them for saving us. You want to condemn them for being too effective, too brutal. I say they deserve our gratitude. Without them, my species would be extinct. Remember that when you pass your judgment. The council deliberated for 6 hours. The vote was contentious and close. In the end, Morrison received an official reprimand for excessive force. It was a symbolic punishment that required him to attend diplomatic training courses. But along with the reprimand came a new authorization. The human fleet was now officially designated as the Council's primary response force for Krell threats. With full tactical autonomy, Morrison accepted the judgment without comment. He had expected worse. The reprimand was a political necessity, a way for the Council to maintain the appearance of control, while acknowledging the reality that they needed human military capability. After the hearing, he found himself alone in an observation deck overlooking the vast Council station. The stars stretched out in every direction, beautiful and cold. He had been staring at them for an hour when Commander Grant found him. She handed him a cup of coffee and stood beside him in comfortable silence. They had served together for 5 years and knew each other well enough that words were not always necessary. The crew is calling you the Butcher of Xeraxis, Grant said eventually. They mean it as a compliment. Morrison smiled without humor. I have been called worse. By better people. Do you think we did the right thing? Grant asked. Not tactically. I know the tactics were sound. But morally, ethically, did we do the right thing? Morrison considered the question carefully. I think we did the necessary thing. Whether that makes it right, I do not know. We saved 50,000 Valine. We eliminated a threat that would have consumed millions more if left unchecked. The cost was high, but the alternative was worse. The galaxy is afraid of us now, Grant observed. They look at humans differently. Some with respect, some with fear, all with caution. Fear can be useful, Morrison replied. It makes enemies think twice. It makes allies value your friendship. We are the monsters that protect civilized species from other monsters. It is not a comfortable role, but someone has to fill it. Grant finished her coffee. The Valine want to name their rebuilt capital after you. New Morrison City. Tell them no. Name it after their own dead. They deserve to be remembered, not me. 3 months passed. The galaxy slowly adjusted to the new reality of human military power. Trade negotiations became easier in some sectors, as species sought to maintain good relationships with the Deathworlders. They became more difficult in others as species tried to limit human influence. The political landscape was shifting in ways that would take years to fully understand. The Valine began rebuilding with human assistance. Engineers from Earth arrived with construction equipment and architectural plans. The partnership was awkward at first. Valine building methods were delicate and artistic, designed for a species that valued beauty over function. Human methods were practical and robust, designed to survive disasters. The compromise was fascinating. Buildings that combined Valine aesthetics with human structural integrity. Cities designed to be beautiful but capable of withstanding attacks. Schools that looked like works of art but had reinforced shelters in the basements. The Valine children were already playing new games, pretending to be human marines protecting their friends from imaginary monsters. Morrison returned to active duty. His reprimand was filed away and mostly forgotten. The Fifth Fleet continued its patrols along the outer rim, protecting trade routes and responding to distress calls. Most were minor incidents, pirates, smugglers, territorial disputes. Nothing that required the full force of human military capability. Then the deep space monitoring stations detected something. Long-range sensors picked up unusual faster-than-light signatures at the edge of Council territory. Dr. Carter was called in to analyze the data. She spent 3 days running simulations and cross-referencing historical records before she came to Morrison with her findings. "Sir, you need to see this," she said, pulling up the sensor data on his screen. "These signatures match Krell bioships, but they are different, larger, more numerous, moving in coordinated patterns that suggest higher intelligence than what we faced at Xeraxis." Morrison studied the data with growing concern. How many ships are we talking about? Current estimate is between 40 and 60 bioships, and they are heading directly toward the heart of Council space, toward systems with populations in the billions. Morrison felt cold certainty settle over him. The battle at Xeraxis Prime had not been the main swarm. It had been a scouting party. The real threat was just now revealing itself. He immediately contacted Council Command and requested an emergency session. Within hours, he was standing in the chambers once again. This time, there was no debate about whether to act. The sensor data was clear and terrifying. The Krell were coming in force, and they were targeting the most densely populated regions of civilized space. Councillor Vrel spoke first, his usual antagonism replaced by barely controlled panic. Admiral Morrison, we need your honest assessment. Can the human fleet stop this threat? Morrison looked at the assembled representatives. Species from 100 different worlds, all looking to him for answers. He had spent his entire career preparing for moments like this. Now it was here. The Fifth Fleet alone cannot stop a swarm of this size. We will need every warship humanity can muster. We will need full authorization for unrestricted warfare. No rules of engagement, no oversight, no second guessing. You give us the authority and the resources, we will eliminate the threat. But you need to understand what that means. Explain, Frel demanded. Morrison chose his words carefully. It means we will hunt the Krell across the galaxy. We will track them to their breeding grounds and destroy them completely. We will use every weapon in our arsenal. We will show no mercy and take no prisoners. When we are done, the Krell will be extinct. But the methods we use will be brutal. They will horrify you. Some of you will call us monsters. Can you accept that? The council chamber was silent. Representatives looked at each other, silently asking the same question. Were they willing to unleash humanity completely? Were they willing to give the Deathworlders unrestricted authority to wage total war? Finally, the council high speaker stood. She was a Valorian, an ancient species known for wisdom and long memory. She had seen the aftermath of the last Krell incursion 3 centuries ago. Admiral Morrison, this council authorizes you to do whatever is necessary to eliminate the Krell threat. We grant you full tactical autonomy and unrestricted access to military resources. We understand the cost of this decision. We also understand the cost of inaction. Do what you must. Morrison stood before the council and nodded once. Understood. We will need 2 weeks to assemble the fleet. I recommend you begin evacuating civilian populations from the projected invasion path. We will stop them, but we cannot guarantee 0 casualties. The mobilization began immediately. Earth sent out the call and every human colony responded. Warships that had been on patrol duty, training exercises, or mothball status were activated and brought to full combat readiness. Crews were assembled from veterans and volunteers alike. Everyone knew what was coming. The fleet that gathered at Staging Point Orion was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. 200 warships, each one a testament to human engineering and human determination to survive. Carriers, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, frigates. 50,000 Marines in powered armor. 10,000 pilots. 200,000 crew members across all ships. Commander Grant walked through the hangar bay of the Valkyrie, watching the final preparations. Marines were checking weapons and armor. Pilots were running diagnostics on fighters. Engineers were reinforcing hull sections and optimizing power distribution. The energy in the air was electric, a mixture of anticipation and fear. Lieutenant Holland found her near the main deployment ramp. He looked different now, older somehow despite only 3 months passing since Xeraxis. Combat aged people in ways that time alone could not. Commander, the Marines are asking questions. They want to know if this is really the end. If we are really going to wipe out the Krell completely, Grant considered her answer carefully. Tell them the truth, Lieutenant. We are going to find every Krell nest, every breeding ground, every bioship. We are going to hunt them until there is nothing left. Not because we enjoy killing, not because we want to be monsters, but because they will never stop until every living thing in the galaxy has been consumed. Someone has to stop them permanently. It might as well be us, Holland nodded slowly. The troops are ready, ma'am. They know what has to be done. On the bridge of the Valkyrie, Morrison sat in his command chair and reviewed the final deployment orders. Every ship had its assignment. Every Marine unit knew its objectives. The plan was comprehensive and brutal. They would engage the Krell fleet in open space, destroy as many bioships as possible, then track the survivors to their source and eliminate them there. Dr. Carter approached with her final briefing. She looked exhausted, having spent the last 2 weeks analyzing every piece of Krell data she could find. Sir, I have identified 3 possible locations for the main Krell breeding grounds based on their movement patterns and historical attacks. They are all deep in uncharted space far beyond Council territory. Morrison studied the star charts she provided. How confident are you in these locations? 70% confidence on the first location, 50% on the others. But sir, if we are wrong, if we do not find and destroy the breeding grounds, they will just keep coming. The bioships we destroy will be replaced within years. Then we make sure we find them, Morrison said simply. Prepare detailed survey plans for all 3 locations. We will not leave until we are certain. The night before departure, Morrison recorded a message for his daughter Anna. She was on Mars, studying xenobiology and full of optimism about humanity's future among the stars. He wanted her to understand what he was about to do and why. Anna, by the time you receive this, the war will be over. We will have won or we will have lost. Either way, I want you to know why we fought. The galaxy is full of beautiful things. Different cultures, different species, different ways of seeing the universe. But it is also full of threats that cannot be reasoned with. The Krell are one of those threats. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. Humanity did not ask to be the ones who fight these battles. We just happen to be good at it. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We survived by becoming fierce, by refusing to give up, by learning how to hurt things that wanted to hurt us. Now the galaxy needs that fierceness. They need us to be the shield between civilization and chaos. Morrison looked directly at the camera. I know you believe in peace, in understanding, in finding common ground. I raised you to believe in those things. They are important values. But you also need to understand that some threats cannot be negotiated with. Some enemies only understand force. When you meet those enemies, you have 2 choices: fight or die. We chose to fight, not because we are monsters, but because someone has to stand in the gap. He ended the recording and sent it with a time delay. By the time Anna received it, everything would be decided. The fleet departed at 600 hours Galactic Standard Time, 200 ships jumping to faster than light as one, disappearing into the space between stars. They left behind a galaxy holding its breath, wondering if the Deathworlders could actually win against odds this extreme. The journey to the intercept point took 4 days. During that time, Morrison drilled the fleet constantly. Attack patterns, defensive formations, damage control procedures. He pushed them hard because he knew the reality of what they were about to face. The Krell would outnumber them. The Krell would not retreat. The only advantage humans had was superior technology and absolute determination. On the morning of the 5th day, sensors detected the Krell swarm. The fleet dropped out of faster than light at the designated coordinates, and Morrison felt his stomach drop at what he saw. Not 40 bioships, not 60. Over 100 bioships, each one massive and crawling with smaller craft. The Krell had gathered their full strength for this invasion. The bridge of the Valkyrie was silent. Every officer stared at the tactical display showing the overwhelming enemy numbers. Morrison could feel their fear, their uncertainty. This was beyond anything they had trained for. He stood up from his command chair and activated the fleet-wide communication channel. Every crew member on every ship could hear his voice. All hands, this is Admiral Morrison. You are looking at the enemy, and I know what you are thinking. There are too many of them. We cannot possibly win. You are wrong. We can win and we will win, not because we are stronger or smarter or better equipped. We will win because we are from Earth. We are from a world that spent 4 billion years trying to kill every living thing on its surface. Our ancestors survived ice ages and predators and diseases that should have wiped them out. They survived because they refused to give up. They survived because they were willing to do whatever it took. He paused, letting his words sink in. The Krell think they are the apex predators of the galaxy. They think nothing can stop them. They are about to learn why you never underestimate a Deathworlder. All ships, Battle Formation Omega, target the largest bioships first. I want concentrated fire on their capital vessels. Marines, prepare for boarding actions. Pilots, be ready to screen against fighters. This is not a battle for territory or resources. This is a battle for survival. Show them what humans do when we fight for survival. The fleet moved into formation with practiced precision. Morrison returned to his command chair and gave the order that would define the next hours, days, or weeks. All weapons, fire at will. Let us introduce the Krell to Oblivion. The space between the fleets erupted in violence. Fusion warheads crossed the void in seconds, detonating against bio-ship hulls with blinding intensity. Railguns fired continuously, their tungsten penetrators punching through organic armor. Directed energy beams carved burning channels through Krell vessels. The Krell responded with everything they had. Thousands of biofighters launched toward the human fleet. Larger bioships fired plasma weapons that boiled away armor. Boarding craft accelerated toward human vessels, carrying warriors ready to tear them apart from the inside. The battle became chaos. Ships maneuvered at speeds that would have killed unaugmented humans. Point defense systems fired until their barrels glowed red. Fighters dogfought in the space between capital ships, human pilots using skill and technology against Krell numbers. Morrison watched it all from the bridge, making decisions in seconds that could mean life or death for thousands. Grant stood beside him, coordinating fleet movements and predicting enemy patterns. Together they fought the battle with cold efficiency, born of years of experience.